Right, evening boys and girls, welcome to this one. Oh dear, what a day so far. I'm getting ready to go and do the car drive to Bristol and back with a Picasso that's got 500, well, they're trying to get to 500,000 miles. 486,000 or something I think is on it now. And it's bloody cold in here. Problem is that in front of me, don't know whether that's picking it up, I thought what I'll do is I'll give myself some heating. And as you're about to see, the heater I've got is absolutely covered in, well, where Bert's been doing her woodwork. And it's probably inside the elements as well. So when I turn this on, it might go a little bit wrong. I'll turn that on. If I turn those on, does that even work anymore? Don't even think it works anymore. It looks like it's properly knackered now. Oh good, it's broken. Oh, well, that saves me going up in flames, doesn't it? Yeah, I thought that still worked, but obviously it's it don't. Fair enough. That could be the reason why it found its way in here then. I'm guessing. Bloody hell. I thought, yeah, I'll put that in front of me and keep myself nice and warm whilst I'm doing this, because it's freezing. It's really cold. And yeah, obviously it's broken, so oh well, I'm not going to go up in flames. Sorry for all the people that don't like me. I didn't catch fire. God knows. It was we actually bought it for in here. Oh no, bought that for the extension when Bert started doing her arts and crafts, when we got a little laser machine thing. And it was just to warm the extension up because there's no heating in there. It's one of those tacky added on extension thing. Well, you've seen inside it if you've watched my channel long enough. And obviously Bert broke it, didn't tell me, and slung it in here instead of slinging it out. When it got covered in dust, I didn't know it was broken, so I thought, I'll use that to keep myself warm, and of course it don't work, so it's useful. Although chances are the fuse blew, so there we go. But I had a stupid idea. Yeah, really stupidly dumb idea. To be fair, I knew it wasn't going to work anyway, but I thought I'll give it a crack. These are old water squirty bottles. And yeah, I left a little bit of water in there, as you can probably tell. But I put some engine oil in it, because I was going to squirt underneath the Terrican. And yeah, it don't squirt. The engine oil's too thick. I knew it would be, but I just thought, I'll give it a crack, see what happens. Not that I really need it. I've got so many bits and bobs, so many products to put under a rusty car, it's unreal. But today I went to see my dad, and a lot of people will think that I don't like him. I'm annoyed with what happened in 2016. Don't get me wrong, I'm very angry about that. But at the same time, I still made those decisions. Does that make sense? I knew if we didn't get the house, I'd overextended myself a little bit. So yeah, little column A, little column B. I don't like the way it played out. I don't like certain things that were said after it played out. Again, that will stay off camera. But I still see him. I still get on with him. And it's always odd, because I go around and see him, and 3 times a year, maybe. I don't see him that often. But I never did, to be fair. But we always talk about, well, he usually tells the same stories over and over again, like he's never told them before. But sometimes we'll talk about current affairs and things like that, and it can get quite interesting, because my dad's he's 70. Yeah, he was born in 1950, yeah, so he's 70. And he's lived through a lot of when things were nationalised. And of course, you've got the whole let's renationalise everything again. And my dad's finding it quite funny because even under nationalisation, companies, segments, sections of industries and things like that still closed because it was too much of a burden. I mean, Dr. Beeching and the railways, for example, that's a brilliant one. And my dad, he's most of my family, virtually all of my family, up from Yorkshire, Huddersfield, Barnsley, places like that, and they're all mining stock. So my dad is very set in his ways about how he votes. I'm sure you can guess, but he finds it comical the way people are talking about. There's been all this privatisation, so on and so forth, and companies are failing. Whether it's a steel industry or whatever, not being competitive from other countries, whatever the reason, companies are failing. The Flybe thing, the plane thing, and everyone's screeching that the government should intervene. And my dad's finding it funny because he's like, well, you wanted privatisation, but at the same time, it's one of those. You can't just renationalise things for the sake of it. If you find a company or an industry or something like that's struggling, that's failing, that it just is not competitive, if you renationalise it, you are putting that burden, keeping that company going for the sake of it, putting that burden on the government, obviously on the tax receipts, the HMRC's budget, if you will. And so in order to keep that going, you've got to take money from other things that you want or that you need. So even if you renationalise everything for the sake of renationalisation, there will still be things that close. There will still be things that fail. And my dad finds it amusing, and I'm certain within his age group, there are other people, if there are anybody of that age group watching me, I really don't know, that will agree with that will have lived through nationalisation when things were nationalised, and they'll have seen certain areas, certain parts being closed and so on and so forth. And he just finds it amusing that the battle cry these days seems to be, the government can step in and save it. Well, first of all, it's privatised, whether it's the steel industry or Flybe or whatever it is. And secondly, why? Things fail, whether it's a capitalist market or a socialist market or any kind of marketplace, things fail. Just because something's failing doesn't mean, nationalise it and save it, because you just put the burden back on everybody. It's kind of this whole, the older people, renationalising water and power, railways and things like that, yeah, I get that. I mean, government's job is really to provide the base services and attract investment and things like that, run the country that way. So, yeah, I can see the point in that one. But at the same time, you've got all of these other companies, whether they're banking organisations, whether they're, air travel companies or whatever it is. Things fail. Nobody started screaming about the government stepping in to help Comet when Comet failed. And it just seems, as time goes on, people are starting to get this idea, this belief, if you will, that the government is no longer government. The government is your parents. Yeah? The government are there to do everything for you. Fix it when it goes wrong. And it's not. It never has been. You could literally have absolutely everything in this country, every company, everything held, by the government. Okay, so full socialist state, whatever. Yeah, everything's nationalised. No private ownership or anything like that. Things will still fail. Things will still close down. People will still become unemployed. It's funny the way things are going. And my dad was just commenting on that today. And it was just an interesting, because every so often you do have, or I do have, interesting conversations with my dad, and he'll point things out like, well, like I said, beaching and railways, and he'll be like, yeah, but they closed them down because there wasn't the demand for them, there wasn't the amount of people using them. It was a complete financial catastrophe waiting to happen if they'd have just carried on. But of course now more people have moved to the areas that those railways used to service, and so now there is a realistic argument to reopen some of the closed rails. But again, just on the general basis of nationalising or the government stepping in to save things, no. Because that will create way more catastrophes for everything. Because where's the money going to come from? What is it at the moment? Of the taxable GDP, 35% is taxed of our GDP. It's quite high at the moment. It's not as high as some countries, not as low as others, but it's quite high compared to what it has been. And again, the way we tax things, there's too many loopholes with it. The system's literally fallen apart now, and we're gumming it up. We're putting a band-aid over things that just need to be okay. Let's just stop, rip that down, start again. There's got to be a point now where, because of the holes, the sieve-like nature of the taxation system, that anybody on PAYE can't avoid. You got no way around it. Everybody else can, and we do. And it's got to be that kind of. There's got to start to be like I said in a previous one, business legislation, not to do with tax, but to do with what else the companies provide their staff. Ways, other ways of doing things. I mean, you're in a nation now that years ago entered a race to the bottom, as my dad will wax lyrical. It was under Thatcher and all this kind of stuff. Whatever you believe, okay, whatever you believe. Obviously, where my dad's from, you can guess why. But we entered a race to the bottom, and all people are interested in now is the amount of money you can save on a product. That's fine. But the money that you spend on a product, a percentage of that goes to a wage bill. So if you spend less on that product, less goes to a wage bill. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the issue with a race to the bottom is eventually you reach it. And then where do you go? We were chatting about it. My dad was he was talking about when he bought his first house. It was 79, and I think there was a limit of like 2.5 or 3 times. I think he said 2.5 times your income was what you could get a mortgage for, something like that. Anyway, and it was in the late 70s. I think he said 79, and he was on about 10 grand a year, and the property he bought was 25 grand. Now, okay, taxation rates were slightly different, but think about that for a second. When my dad first bought his house, interest rates were higher, considerably higher than they are now. He was on about 10 grand a year, and he bought his first house that was about 25 grand. Now, he could have got a cheaper one, he openly admits that, but he went for the best he could afford at the time, as most people do. And you sit there and go, hold on a minute. He was literally at the 2.5 times, level. And today, it's like when he got the house he lives in now. It was up for 36 grand. He did a Part X thing, so he ended up paying 30 grand for it, and it was about 3 times his wage at the time, because it was a more expensive house, but he'd had a previous house before that to Part X in, so he got it slightly cheaper. But his house today is worth about 340 grand. And if I was full time, I'd be 32,600 at the company I'm working for. And we were having a chat about that, and he's like, he was talking about at one point his house was going up way quicker than his wages were. And when he first said it, he sounded kind of like he was still surprised by that. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's why houses are so vastly more expensive compared to wages, compared to when he first got a house. And there's a kind of knock-on problem with that. When my dad got a house, interest rates were high. You know, you paid a lot more on your mortgage. It was more of a stretch. But when interest rates are high, you get better savings rates. Your pensions grow better. Yeah, things like that. Yes, interest rates are rock bottom. So, you know, having a mortgage on a, well, what is it, 250 grand mortgage over 35 years at the moment is about 650 quid a month. Ooh, brilliant, brilliant. But your savings don't grow. Your pensions don't grow. You know? So there's... And the problem is that because of how... I mean, what is it? Today, the average house price is around 8.7 times the average single wage. You know? It was about 3 and a bit, 4 times max when my dad first got a house. And the first place he bought, I know where it is. It was 14 Boyce Road in Stamford-le-Hope. That was the first house. That was the first property he bought, and he moved a couple of doors down to another property in Boyce Road. I can't remember the number of that. I think it was a couple of doors over. So I don't know which way he went, but I know the first one was 14 Boyce Road in Stamford-le-Hope, and that was a relatively cheap, small bungalow, I believe. And he stayed there for a while, and he moved on. But like we were having a conversation today, he turns around and says it was when they relaxed all the regulations on the banks. You know, I mean, he was talking about, what was it, 2.5 or 3 times was the limit on what your wage was compared to what you could afford buying a property. So if you think 2.5 times, I mean, imagine if that was it today. I mean, we've got 4.5 times today, and that's the household income. Imagine if it was only 2.5. How many of you recently bought your houses would actually have been able to buy them if it was the same? You wouldn't. And like my dad said, the reason house prices took off the way they did, outside of the estate agents charging a percentage of what they sold the house for, so the more they sold it for, the more they made, was literally when they relinquished the legislation, the restrictions on the banking sector. And all of a sudden, you could sell subprime mortgages. You know, you could give mortgages to people you knew couldn't pay them. Yeah? Everything, it was a buyer's market. Literally, not buy, sorry, it was a seller's market, for example, because everybody was buying. It was a seller's market. You know? Charge what you wanted. Houses went vertical. Wages didn't. Yeah, and it's just the conversations I have with my dad is kind of, they're fun, they're interesting, and I love conversations with people of that generation or that age group, whether it's my dad or an uncle or somebody I work with, because it puts into perspective what happened when you allowed the banks to do whatever the hell they wanted. Oh yeah, borrowing was easier. Yeah, interest rates went up, savings went sky high, brilliant. Then it all went wrong. Wasn't so good then, was it? You know, it's like most of the legislation that was removed, and as my dad waxes lyrical about all the time under Reagan and Thatcher, it was put in place after the crash of the 20s to prevent a crash like that ever happening again. Yeah. Worked well, didn't it? You know, worked well when it worked perfectly. The odd crash and financial ups and downs does happen, especially with wars. You know, throw an odd war in here and there, that causes it. But then they relinquished it all, and you could borrow whatever the hell you wanted. You could get whatever the hell you wanted. And everything took off. And our wages didn't. And we entered this wonderful race where everything was a deal. I can save you thousands of pounds on this. I can save you loads of money on that. Ah, brilliant. Brilliant. But all those products that are being sold, that's where the money to pay your wages come from. So if they're being sold at a loss or barely profitable, look at the haulage company. Look at the haulage industry. It's literally on its knees. You're talking about NFT have gone into administration. Eddie Stobart are struggling with the same kind of issue. These aren't small local companies. These are big hauliers, and the profit margins are tiny. So where's your wage coming from? Oh well, it's got to be cheap. It's got to be cheap. It's got to be cheap. Yeah, because your wages are low. And I've been saying wages are dangerously low in this country, not just in this industry, but in this country as a whole, for years. And I've been yelled at, and most of the people who had a go at me are now posting things on social media. Say, oh, look at this wage, it's just wrong, and it's too low, and it's bullshit, and I was offered this job, and it wasn't paying enough. And I'm sitting there thinking, a couple of years ago, you were having a go at me for saying that. I'm just sitting there. And the thing that interests me, my dad was saying it today, everything he had in his working life, you know, his very strong final salary pension scheme, he's got state, army and fold pension, final salary pension, and after tax he does about 2,400 quid a month after tax. He doesn't have a mortgage, doesn't have car finance, has no debts. Literally all his money. Yeah? Fantastic. He only did a few years. He didn't do many years in the army. I think he did 6. I think he did something like that. And that was Royal Engineers Made Easy. Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. Somebody's going to have a go at me for that one. But you know, he points out, he says virtually everything he had, the wage rises he had, the pension he had, it was all thanks to the strength of the unions. It was all thanks to the way the workforce, well, unionised, industrial action, things like that, because industrial action wasn't just in the public sector, it was everywhere. And yes, it did get out of hand. Yes, it did get a bit too greedy. And things did go wrong. But another thing my dad can't understand is the way people today, working class and lower middle class and things like that of a certain age, kind of my age group and younger, view strike action as bad, as evil, as no, shouldn't do that. He just doesn't understand why people think that, because he says if his generation had the same ideology, he would not have what he has today. Not even close. And the fun thing is, no matter how much you cut this about and screw about with it, or have a go at me, if the average wage in this country is around 30 grand, okay, I'm rounding the figures here, but it's around 30 grand, and the average wage in this country should be, given living costs, average house prices, so on and so forth, should be around 54 grand, and I'm not the only one saying that. There are independent bodies and research and study organisations that actually say that. Imagine the tax receipts if it was 20% of 54 grand and not 20% of 30 grand. Imagine the extra money, the extra spending. Prices would still be the same, but we wouldn't have been in a race to the bottom. HMRC would be getting more money. And okay, fair enough, all HMRC's tax receipts, what is it, about 24-25% of their overall annual income is from income tax alone. So yes, more of it is from other sources. But just imagine if the average wage was 54. Yeah, 20% of that. It's a little bit more than 20% of 30 grand, isn't it? And of course you got the tax-free allowance. But if the average wage was 54 grand, would you need the tax-free allowance? Because the lower wages would be considerably higher. But people don't look at it like that. It's been ingrained in us for decades, for all of my generation, easily. You buy one, get one free, fucking deals, this, low there, and all, let's keep this. Where do you think your wage comes from? I mean, seriously. Yes, you pay a little bit more, but you pay a little bit more in comparison to a larger income. It's just brilliant. There's loads and loads and loads of nuanced bits and bobs and other bits and bobs in society. Yes, I know. But it's fascinating the way we have changed. And it's literally happened over my generation. The way our views, our thought processes have changed because a couple of union leaders got a little bit too big for their boots, got a little bit too demanding, and the nation voted in a political entity whose manifesto pledges were quite literally break the backs of the unions. And now everybody thinks it's evil, it's bad. There's some sites I go to and they'll have Unite or USDA or whatever unions on there. And you'll hear the drivers, the company drivers, are talking about the union reps on site. You know, the employees who are the union reps and all that kind of stuff. I'll insert a name here, okay, a random name. Yeah, well, Joe's always been a communist, hasn't he? It's like, how's your wage? Yeah, you don't think it's high enough? Maybe you shouldn't call Joe a communist. The reality is, we've replaced the aristocracy and a feudal system. We switched it to, people running and so on, and running the government. We are representing ourselves and so on and so forth. Self-governance. And now we've got a government that's just going completely autocratic. We've got, whether it's Labour, whether it's Conservatives, it's got to the point now where virtually everybody younger than me looks at government like they're their mum and dad. Like they're there to babysitters. And they're not. Most of you work in the private sector. It's called the private sector. Yeah? Not the public sector. Yeah, well, my boss doesn't pay enough. Well, maybe you should get rid of the basic minimum wage that allows him to pay you that, and then have a stronger union, and guess what? And then you get wage competition. And then prices do go up, but wages go up. And wages, more often than not, go up quicker than prices. Because companies still need to sell their shit to you. It's just brilliant. But again, I have all these conversations all the time, and me personally, on a political level, I am neither left nor right because any government body, any government party, as far as I'm concerned, is operating under a system that is not fit for purpose. It's operating under a construct that is so broken. There is literally no way of fixing it. It's like you've got an old people carrier, an old car. You've had it for years. And every year it costs you more and more money. But you refuse to get rid of it. You're going to keep it going. You end up getting to the point where you're spending £5,000 a year. My father-in-law was doing this when I met him. Keeping your people carrier going when you could be spending £3,500 a year or less on a brand new car with warranty. We are in that situation now where this entire construct is broken to the point of, you ain't fixing this one, sweetheart. This is a parts car. You know? There are good parts of it. There are parts that need to stay. But they should be attached to a new system. So I don't care whether the Conservatives in or whether Labour's in. Yes, I never liked Jeremy Corbyn. Doesn't mean I like Theresa May. I just really felt Corbyn's a slimy... Yeah, I don't like him. I'm allowed to think that of somebody. Yeah? Doesn't mean that I hate all of his policies. I just didn't like him. Yeah? That's it. That's it. Alright? It was a personal thing. Right? Just didn't like him. Wouldn't wish him pain or death or anything nasty. I didn't hate him. I just felt he was slimy and he wasn't what you think he is. But that was me personally. But it doesn't make me a Conservative. It doesn't make me a new Labourist. I don't care, because both of them, any of them, Liberal Democrats, the Greens, the Conservatives, whoever, they're fiendishly slaving away to win your vote under a system that is making your life harder. Regardless of who the hell's in, it's so broken, there's so many holes in it. I am literally neutral. Yes, I believe in the workforce unionisation. Yes, I believe in a level of nationalisation. Because what the hell's government supposed to do? It's not here to be mummy and daddy and wipe your bum for you. It's here to provide you with the things you need. One of them, mass transit system. Yeah? Transportation of people. Yeah? Water, kind of important. Maybe it shouldn't be in the hands of some Russian oligarch somewhere. You know? Electricity, kind of important. Yeah, again. Yeah, but not fucking everything. But anyway, whatever. Anyway, that's this upload. Like I said, I've got a heck of a lot to do. I've got to go charge batteries. I've got to edit this now. And then I've got a bugger. I've got to be up at 4 a.m. tomorrow. Oh, crap. Just under 12 hours, or just over 12 hours from now. Hey, woo! Got the washing up to do. I've filled the jag up, that's fine. I think I might go out for a Chinese tonight. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share about, do whatever it is you usually do. I'll see you in the next one. Now, yes, very quickly, Luke, who is coming with me tomorrow. He has voiced concern. He doesn't want to appear on the channel. Obviously, I'm going to have a chat with him tomorrow. If he doesn't want to appear, I'm not going to make him. Alright? There might be the odd shot of a shoulder of his or something like that. Maybe him looking at the car as I'm walking around it or something, or a reflection. But if he doesn't want to appear on the channel, I'm not going to make him. Okay? So I'll probably make something for this channel, but again, if it's just a shoulder in the passenger seat or something, that's what you're going to see of him. If he wants to appear, fine. If he doesn't, whatever. But I'll never force anybody to do something they don't want to do. Because some people, you just don't want to be publicised, do you? You know, you don't want to put your head above the parapet. You don't want to get it shut off. As I'm absolutely certain some of the stuff I said in this upload is going to do to me. But but anyway, like I said, thanks for watching. Again, like, subscribe, share about, do whatever it is you usually do. Link to wearing bearings is in the description below. Come on, chop chop. I need to get to 100 subscribers. Come on. What are you doing? You're watching this bollocks. Why don't go and watch me on a different channel? But anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.